Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Today we're going to move you from despair to hope and not the other way around. You ready for a good show?
I've moved to despair already.
Oh, no.
That was hilarious.
We're going to take you from hope to despair in 1 hour or less. So, yeah. No,
I wasn't prepared for that.
we got a great show today. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube, Facebook, join the tribe. Like, I don't even know how you're on this video because that's about the only way that you would see us. So maybe you've already done all that stuff. And if you haven't, hit the smash button on the subscribe. That should be called the smash button, not the subscribe button. And then if you haven't checked out our programs and you're curious about the SG groups, check out 12journeyscoaching.com and watch the free webinar there. Great program that we offer that really is a transformation for your life from being, playing small to moving to your giant potential. Lori Parks from Canada, how are you? So we got a great guest this morning. Ryan, do you want to introduce our guest?
Yes, this is my good friend. He goes by Richard Youhan or however you want to say it. It's like potato.
Or potato.
Or tomato.
Or Youhan.
His whole family says it differently, so I don't even know.
That is correct.
I just call him Rich, as I've been lovingly trained. Rich was born in 1980, January 26, 1980, in Yonkers, New York. He grew up in Southern California, joined the Navy in the submarine fleet in May of 2001 to October 2010. He is a culinary specialist and has 2 kids, Lucas and Chloe. Married for 16 years, divorced for 3, and in 2014, diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression, along with PTSD from a lot of things in the military. In 2015, he was also diagnosed with bipolar and borderline personality disorder in the middle of the night. He'll tell you maybe more in depth in this story, but kind of middle of the night, just disappeared for 3 months, Rich.
Yeah.
And, just disappeared for a bit. And at that point, then checked himself into a clinic and was able to get some help there. And then since then has become an advocate for mental health and has done a bunch of things to help other people. And today he gets to help us on Wake Up with Giants. So thank you, Rich. Was that okay?
Absolutely. That was
there's
fantastic.
a lot more stuff.
Almost brought a tear to my eye. So thank you. I know you were a bit nervous about that.
That
I
is
was
awesome.
so nervous. Rich and I have become friends. We met selling RVs together, actually. And from the instant we met, the dude made me laugh. And we were sitting in offices next to each other. And one day he said something, and it was the culture where I was working was kind of like, you don't talk to the new guy. And so that was the norm. And I can't remember what was said exactly. It doesn't even matter. But Rich just like, he said some of the funniest stuff I've ever heard in my life, and I was dying laughing. And from that point on, I was like, "Yeah, brother, you're gonna make it here. I'm gonna do whatever I can do, and I am your friend for life. If this is who you are, I'm in."
Yeah, and you get free hugs every day. So
he got a couple yesterday.
Maybe
hugger.
A kiss
Absolutely.
or 2. It's fine.
Man, that's I'm listening to as you're talking about the bio there. Look, wait, that's mine. That's my bio. Why are you telling my bio? Except for the borderline, but man, that's intense. What you're talking about here are some of the more intense emotional, mental challenges that people face: bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, anxiety, right? PTSD. Right. Like these are intense, and for a lot of people, they take over their lives. And so I think, as we dive in today, we're kind of going to go through the 12 journeys that we go through, and we're going to look at how this all came about and what you did to kind of remedy.
For sure.
But if we get off track, dude, like, don't feel bad. Like,
all
that's
right.
part of our show, is to get off track. We'll talk
will.
about anything. Yeah. Pooping unicorns, things like that.
That's great.
We'll get into all of it. So let's go back, to unconsciousness. So that's where we always start, is unconsciousness. And when I look at that, and you'll know where kind of to interject here, is the idea of who we think we are, right? So we've spent a lifetime developing our personality as we know it from all of our experiences. So we come into this world, there's not really anything there. There might be some, predispositions, but we really just learn and adopt all this stuff over time. And so at what point did you have an awakening to who you were being in your world? I mean, if we really start there.
Yeah, it kind of went like twofold, right? So being born in New York in the 80s and then moving to Southern California in the 90s, like pre kind of internet, if you will, it was like a shocking transformation of like two worlds. So that kind of began like almost this feeling of not properly fitting in anywhere, and it kind of like played out as I grew older, and I kind of, it feeds into a narrative in your mind of, you don't belong, or you're not good enough, or it's not correct. And, every kind of milestone I hit in life that you kind of check a box, like I should be doing this and be doing this, it never kind of felt right, or there was no like gratification or self-gratification with it. So it again,
like
kind
a
of
dissonance, almost like,
it's almost like, like I was like faking my like life, or going through the motions of my life that I didn't truly belong. Even though I was like sitting in my home that I owned, I felt like I wasn't kind of like worthy of being in that neighborhood, or like living in this house, or having this life. And it just kind of, it was almost like this like false identity I was living, and it just kind of carried on from I was a kid kind of till I was in my 30s. Ryan kind of touched on it earlier. Like 2014 is when stuff kind of started going sideways from a mental health perspective. And, that's even with that, right? Like, I think I was telling Ryan yesterday, everybody kind of knows, right, what like anxiety and depression are and stuff, but you don't know you have it or how it's affecting you in your day to day. So even with that, like, my ex-wife was like, you got some stuff going on, you should go get some therapy. And even through that, I would like kind of fake my way through the 53-minute session just to get through it, to say, okay, cool, I'm going to therapy. Like everything's fine, so.
Right.
Like that will solve all the problems, just the therapy.
Check that box. Like I'm seeing a therapist, everything's good,
Yeah, but it's not. I mean, you have this awakening to it. And I'm sure, when we go into our journey of awareness, a lot of people, when they wake up to how they've been, or they start waking up like you did, that can be really challenging, because we have a lot of judgments that come up, a lot of shame that comes up, guilt, depression, anxiety, like the PTSD, the post-traumatic stress disorder, even complex PTSD, right? Where it's ongoing abuse of some kind or ongoing stress of some kind. We're so hard on ourselves. So when you started having this awakening, or having, I like that. It's a new word, having. When you start having this,
I'm having a drink.
I think I
right
gotta
now.
lay off the caffeine too. It's like
enjoy.
So you have this awakening, and you move into that space of, did you move into a judgment of yourself? I mean, were you really hard on yourself over what was happening?
It was, I don't know if it was necessarily like a judgment of myself. It was more of like, I just compounded it and kind of like spiraled downward even further as I realized what this was, and kind of like dug myself into a deeper hole that I was telling myself there's no possible way to move past this. It was just like compound. Every day got like progressively worse, to where it was almost like, just barely getting through the motion. I always kind of joke about like Maslow's hierarchy. I was like, I had Rich's hierarchy. It was like, these like 5 things I had to do every day. And it would like shrunk down to like 1.5 things, and it was
I'll
just
get
like,
one of these done, and I'm
good, and I was
right?
like, great, I'm doing that. It was just so.
Yeah. man, because we spin into grief around that and depression, right?
Mhm.
And grief is around loss, generally a loss of
Right.
something, and it can be anything. But depression is more of our self-worth and our value, right? So when we see ourselves as broken, and we start thinking that I'm broken, I'm not normal, something's off here, it can really spiral us down. A lot of people end up in suicide there. A lot of people end up on drugs or addictions there because the intensity of those emotions are so big, right?
Right.
So especially borderline personality. I mean, at what point were you diagnosed, and what did that diagnosis do for you?
Sure. So it all kind of came to a head in like 2015, kind of a year after starting therapy and whatnot. As Ryan said, I literally like middle of the night just fled. I just left, didn't tell my spouse, my kids, nothing, like left a note and just left. Literally did like nothing positive, nothing. I just ran because I had reached a point that, there was suicidal ideation and thoughts, and it was like either just flee this where I'm at or, end it. So I fled, spent 3 months kind of just roaming, if you will. And then that's when I decided I was living in the Chicagoland area at the time. And that's when I decided to come back home and check myself into a hospital. And that's kind of where different diagnoses came up as far as, bipolar 1 and borderline personality disorder. And from what I've been told, because there's been like kind of multiple diagnoses, there's a lot of like gray area between the two or crossover. So one doctor will say it's BPD, one will say it's bipolar, and others will say, no, it's both, because it kind of crosses over. And with that diagnosis, it actually like gave me hope. Like some people that could be like despair, right? Yep. But it gave me some hope. It like helped me kind of understand why some of my behaviors were the way they were. And it helped me come up with a plan with a psychologist and a team of therapists I was seeing that, these are, I guess, for lack of a better word, normal behaviors and actions with this diagnosis. And here's how we can kind of work through them with different types of therapies. Medication has helped significantly. And I know there's stigma around that. And it took a while to kind of find the right dosage and cocktail, but it's not about, I don't know, to me, like the medication part of it, it's not about like being perfect. It's about like narrowing that gap of your center line, like the highs won't be as high and the lows won't be as low. And that helps you function on a day to day.
Yeah. So this is cool because you're talking about all these events in your life started creating what became mental illness, because the brain is functioning the way it functions. But then if you have trauma and you have neglect, or you have any of these intense, energetic experiences, and you're not being heard, there's nowhere to share this. There's no empathy out there. Like you talk about it and there's nobody to really listen to it. And so you start feeling like you're broken. And the only thing you can think of is, I need to take my life, or I need to run away. Right. And you run away, and thankfully you come back, and just having an understanding of what's going on. Right. It's amazing how much hope that can bring.
Right.
Even a diagnosis is enough to give me a foresight for the future that I can actually do something about this. Right.
And what's kind of crazy with the diagnosis, my parents were both immigrants, born in Iran, came to the US in the 60s. So like mental health like wasn't a thing for them, or like my grandparents, right? Like you just like shut it down and like deal with it either through substance or just like be quiet and keep working or whatever. So my dad was like a lifelong heroin addict forever, and he just self-medicated basically. And when I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder, I gave him a call, and he immediately knew. I was like, Dad, I got to tell you something. And he was like, yeah, you're bipolar, right? I was like, yeah, how'd you know? Like, he's like, I've known since, for years, but you've been just kind of working your way through it. And so he knew. I was like, dude, a heads up would have been great, but like he saw, but he didn't know how to, like, he dealt with it in his own way. There was no medication, or there was self-medication, and so being able to kind of have a sounding board with him once that was done, and he was kind of motivation to, get help and get on medication and seek therapy and things like that, because that's the like the alternative route essentially that he took, you know. So
What kind of things, Rich, and you can answer this, like you can not answer or leave out, whatever you want, but what
sure.
things led, like, contributed to all of this stuff? I mean, how was your childhood? What was,
For
what was
sure.
growing up like, and things like that? Because there's a lot
I,
of people that are, like, well, I don't know if that's me or whatever. If
right.
you just tell a little bit of your story and some of
Yeah.
the things leading up to it, that would help.
I think a big part of it, like growing up, like, and it's tough, right? Like you always kind of like harp on the parent with like the visible issues, right? It's like my
Sure.
dad was a drug addict. He never like held a job. He ended up being homeless, and like growing up with that kind of like shame. I grew up in like a very tight knit family. We grew up living in like a 6-family apartment building. It was all my cousins and family, and like, you know, my brother and I would kind of get left out a lot because who our dad was, you know. So there was that kind of shame, and that fed into like self-worth and how you look at yourself, right? Because you're essentially at that point, you're an image of your parents, you know, so that really fed into it. And then again, relocating to California, we moved to like a more affluent area. We were still kind of the kids who didn't have anything, and our dad was still our dad. And you know, that fed into that narrative even more. And then with that, my mom, who is an amazing human, and I didn't realize this till years of therapy as an adult, she put so much emphasis on myself to succeed, and like she put her worth in myself and my brother. So that was a whole other pressure that I never realized, because she was the parent that was there. She was the parent that went to work, the one that, you know, had food for us and things. So I was like, she's amazing. But then there's this like underlying pressure to kind of do X, Y, and Z and have the white picket fence and all that stuff. And it's something maybe I necessarily didn't want, but it was something that she put all this value in, and my kids need to have this to kind of succeed. And that literally took years of therapy to kind of understand. And then till honestly, a few years ago, and I had no idea of this, and something triggered it, but there was like sexual abuse when I was a kid from a relative. And I literally had no idea it had happened. I had completely blocked it out. And I used to collect baseball cards, and saw, Ryan, you'll probably know these, the 1987 Topps cards with a little wood around them. I saw one of those going through some stuff, and it like all came rushing back, you know. And that had been trauma I had been carrying with me since I was, you know, 4 till 10 years old, that not even processed, wasn't even acknowledging, you know. And that was a huge thing to be carrying as a 40-something-year-old guy, you know, and kind of just working through that. So,
yeah, I think this is valuable, you know, going back and kind of discovering where it came from. And the biggest challenge is that we want we justify who we are today with our past, right? We go back and we say, here's why I'm this, and here's why I'm that, and this is why I do this, right?
right.
But the challenge is that who we are often is like keeping us stuck from who we could be.
Right.
So we stay stuck in this story, and then we start demonstrating these behaviors like borderline personality or bipolar disorder or PTSD, these symptoms, and then that takes over, and we can't move forward because we're so stuck in our emotions, right?
Right.
Like the intensity of the emotions. And help correct me if I'm off on this, is that when it comes to like borderline personality, the emotions take over. Bipolar, the emotions take over. Like you said, the medications help level out the emotions so that you can actually process in a normal level.
Right.
And so many of us think that we are our emotions. And so we start to devalue ourselves because of what's happening in our body physically.
Absolutely.
Right. So we think we're worthless or broken or devalued, and then we can't function from there. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of a big part of that with like the self-worth and how you value yourself, it affects relationships, friendships. I mean, for years I've just, you know, broken relationships. I can build a connection with someone instantaneously and then just destroy it just as quick, you know. And it kind of goes back to self-worth. Like, I don't value myself. Why should I have this connection, or why should this person see any value in myself. And again, with the range of emotions, that can lead to kind of the fight or flight. It's the best way to end it is just to disappear or run away and just kind of fall off the face of the earth, or self-sabotage it, and cause a huge issue. And that's been a huge thing for me. Like,
is there some thinking there though? If we can hang on to that, is there some thinking there that says, they're going to be better off without me? That I'm making their world worse, right? So they would be better without me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it even goes that, like, the basics of a friendship, right? Like receiving something from a friend or giving something to a friend. It kind of, again, goes back to, well, I'm not worthy of this. Like, if Ryan helps me out with something, I'm like, well, why are you doing this? Like I'm standoffish almost at times.
Wow.
And, it could be something as simple as like, here's a soda, and I'm like, why are you doing this? Or I'm not worthy of that. It's kind of always there.
That, right.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing, honestly, has been like self-awareness and like stopping the thought as it's kind of conjuring up and then just spiraling out of control, because it can just go from 0 to 1,000 in 2 seconds in your own mind.
Let's talk about that, because we move into the journeys of gratitude and empowerment, which, for us are the tools that you use to get back into regulation, to get your mind back, to get your body calmed down. And I'm certain with borderline, generally they do DBT or dialectical behavioral therapy. And then you go into cognitive behavioral therapy where you're working through the thoughts. But if you can't even get the emotions checked, there's no way that you can do anything with the thoughts. And so like the, acceptance and commitment theory, that's another one where it's I am where I am kind of a thing. But you can't even get there if your emotions are fired. So can you talk about some of the tools that are useful for you? You talked about medication, but if there are others too that have been really, really impactful,
sure.
Can you share those?
Yeah, one big thing, and I don't know if it's necessarily like a tool per se, but like I was going to like large group and small group kind of therapy, either at the VA or through like NAMI type things where, you're kind of just in a large group, someone facilitates. And I usually present pretty well, even when I'm like really low or really high. I can present well and nobody has a clue, right? I can put a mask on. It's kind of been my pattern. So I actually had a guy who was struggling really bad. He came up to me after a large group and he was like, seeing you talk about where you're at kind of mentally and how you're presenting gave me some inspiration and hope to kind of move forward. Wow. And that was a huge like turning point for me. I guess part of it, like it was helping me selfishly, right? I'm like, wow, I'm giving this guy some hope. And that was, that was like a light switch for me. I was like, maybe I'm not as bad as I'm telling myself if I can
I want to highlight this. Like when you are able to give somebody hope, that becomes a purpose. Like Viktor Frankl's work, he talks about having a purpose, and that's part of our journeys as well. The legacy journey is having that purpose. But sometimes we don't recognize the purpose until we experience it, right?
Right.
You're in this environment. This guy comes up and says, that really inspired and brought hope in me. Well, now you've got this generation of hope or generation of hope,
right?
As a purpose. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Because in your day to day, you're not realizing how you're impacting someone positively, right? Because you're telling yourself you're not worthy of any of this, or your behaviors aren't correct, or how could you possibly be giving a positive impact to anybody you come across? So somebody actually stopping me and saying that was like a huge like light switch being turned on. And
wow.
So that's kind of led me into different things. Like I went and got certified as a peer counselor through the VA, and that's been like a huge help to me, kind of facilitating these groups now, because I can tell myself I'm helping, a group of people by sharing, and so
as a tool for you, serving others is actually a tool for regulating your emotions. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's again, to me, it's almost something like tangible that I can take back and say, I'm actually making a difference. Right. And it's like, again, it's kind of selfish, right? Like I'm telling myself, even now I'm being negative about it. Right. But I'm saying like,
that's okay.
I'm,
this is relatable though.
yeah, like I'm making a difference in these people's lives, right? But then there's always that like seed of doubt, like how are you making a difference, right? But like seeing people show up week after week is a big help, So
well, let's hang here for a minute because tools are necessary. Because a lot of times we can't see a brighter future. We can't have hope in our future because we're so overrun by our emotions.
mm-hmm.
And without hope, we go to the opposite, which is despair, right? And despair is, in Latin, hope is esperar and despair is desperar, and that's to breathe out of, and hope is to breathe into, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we won't breathe into our dreams and visions if we're feeling despair because we're breathing out, right? It's like we don't have the air to give to it.
Right.
So the idea of hope is that when we have a clear vision of what's possible for us and we have hope, it gets us into action. It gets us motivated, inspired, and driven. But when we're feeling despair, we're the opposite of that. And so to get from despair to just peace, not from despair to hope, like from despair to peace, like to get your body calm. Outside of medication, what are some other things that have worked? The teaching that you talked about. What are some other tools that have been really effective to regulate those emotions and bring them back to a normal state?
Ryan hugs.
Sure. Was Ryan that right?
Hugs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got to get a Ryan hug every now and again.
Daily. I just drive by your house.
Just drive on over, run in, hug.
Hey, brother, will you wrap your arms around me for a minute?
They really are. They really are.
That's a tool, man.
Yeah.
A tool from a tool. Yeah.
Absolutely. The biggest.
Yeah.
No. So like, I think like you kind of touched on like DBT, that's been a really helpful tool. And that's one thing like, so the last inpatient, I did, they actually had us like draw a little toolbox and put things in it, right. That were going to benefit us or help us as we kind of move through our journey. And like DBT was a huge one for me because it's kind of, I mean, you're kind of in it addressing the issues, and that's been a big thing.
You're addressing it while triggered, right? Is that what you mean?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Right. And working through that trauma while you are triggered, you're actually releasing it. To your point, you're breathing it out. You're because again, you're carrying it like luggage with you, so it's when people say I have baggage, well, it's like, yeah, it really is that trauma. You're toting it around with you everywhere. And it's, it is building walls, and you're putting walls up around yourself. So you can't fully commit to anything or be yourself. So I feel like the, DBT, talk therapy, things like that have been huge helps for me. And then with that, like being able to connect more with my kids, that's been a huge tool for me. They're involved in different activities and sports, and being present has helped so much because my mind is in some far off place that I think, what am I doing? I'm not worthy to be here, things like that. But being able to be present in a moment with them and enjoy something as simple as going to basketball practice.
I want to speak to that too, because when we get into that space of despair, right, and we look forward, we don't see a bright future, and we just see this continuing, and it's like, I can't do that. If that's my future, like, what am I doing? Right. And a lot of people get really spiraled down by the projection. And it's not prospection where it's a positive prediction. It's a negative prediction into the future about what's going to happen from what you're feeling today.
Right.
And to get present, see, presence is powerful. Mindfulness, they're finding with research, is one of the most powerful things you can do. But when it comes to that term, a lot of people don't understand what is mindfulness. And mindfulness, when in the sense of emotions, is just feeling the feelings. Right. But not attaching to them. You're just noticing them. You're aware of them. You're observing them. You're separating yourself from them. They're not you anymore. They're just things that are happening within you. and being able to re-engage with like your kids going to basketball practice and things like that is a way to get just into that experience, whatever that experience is. It pulls you out of thinking about the past and then predicting out to the future. When you get into the present and you get calm and then you predict out in the future, it becomes more hopeful.
Right.
But if you're in despair and predict into the future, it's very dark and very hopeless, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's like, it's such a chain too, because it takes out any like joy or pleasure you're going to be having in that moment. Something as simplistic as driving your kids to school, right? You're taking the joy and pleasure out of that because you're already projecting a negative thought on the future, the next event, whatever it may be, and your mind's continuously ahead of where you are, and it's not in a positive space, you know?
Right,
so
right. When it's doing it, right?
Right. Even something as simple as like grounding myself. Like if I feel myself kind of spiraling or racing, I'll literally just sit down on the ground and just try to like clear my mind for even a minute, you know, just literally ground myself, you know, sit on the ground and just kind of work through it. And I feel like it helps from a self-awareness perspective, because you almost have to be like hyper aware of your kind of being and where you're at in a mental space, because you can spiral so quick into the other direction, you know, and it happens from, you know, minute to minute, day by day. And then next thing you know, you're a week, 2 weeks into this and you're kind of back in a dark spot. So
for me, it was a decade. It was 10 years of not being able to see through the darkness, you know, and then like you, that diagnosis of generalized anxiety, it was like, oh, thank God that's it. Cause I thought I had this and that and all this stuff. And so being able to ground in the moment, to center, to get back to now, it's a conscious effort. It can be very tiring at first, but there's a point where your body starts to take over and starts to help you automate that, where it's not so hard. But initially, it really does take a lot of attention. It feels like it's never going to end.
Right. I mean, honestly, sitting alone with yourself and in your mind, like self-introspection, it's terrifying. Just the thought of it, right? Like sitting in your mind, like it
That's
can
why
go
people drink or do drugs, right? Like that, the thought of that and the emotion of that is intense.
Yeah, like you said, drink or, you know, do drugs. You can just numb yourself or numb your senses and just kind of float through your life or your emotions and not work through any of it or be aware of it, because you're just numbing constantly.
Your drug might be something else. It might
it
be avoidance or, you know, of any type.
Busyness,
anything, watching TV, whatever. I mean, it could be a million different things, just avoidance of that, to not feel the thing.
Right. And that avoidance, I'm sorry guys, that avoidance, it's always just, it's compounding. It doesn't, you know, the issue at hand doesn't go anywhere. It just, you know, it just stays there and gets progressively worse and just, you know, kind of puts you back in that dark space until you can kind of.
Yeah. The interesting thing though, is it at the moment you turn around and face it, it just like disappears.
It's like shining a light, right? Like just, there's no more shadows.
Like you think there's a shadow like chasing you, and you turn around and put the light on, and there's nothing there. It's like, it's not that, you know, what we created wasn't true for us. It's just that when we really turn around and face it, it tends to dissipate and dissolve on its own. It's by that matter of facing it, right?
Right. Yeah, like you just said, I mean, it's real to you, right? In that moment. I mean, it's your reality, what you're telling yourself. It's just a matter of where you kind of take that reality and how you perceive it and kind of work through it. So this is kind of cheesy, but that TV show Dexter, I don't know if you guys have seen it. He talks about his like dark passenger, like, you know, he's a serial killer, obviously, but he talks about his dark passenger and like, he's aware of it. Obviously he doesn't handle it in a proper fashion by being a serial killer, but you know, like you said, there's like a shadow there, like your dark passenger. It's, you know, you have to acknowledge this thing and kind of work through it, you know, so.
Well, and embrace it. You know, I have the tattoo on my arm of the two wolves, the dark and the light, you know, and some people, the story is that the one you feed is the one that lives. And My version of that is know that you need to embrace both of them because they're both part of you. We all have darkness within us. We all have
Correct.
light within us, right?
Right.
So being able to face it and really look at it gives it room to not only be present, but to dissolve, because we allow it to build up in our mind that it's bigger than us and that there's nothing we can do and that we're overtaken by it. And then when we try and be in our present, we can't, because that takes over. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ryan has said it a few times. It's avoidance, right? It's almost like you don't even have like the conflict resolution internally to kind of like work through it. So you just avoid it, right? Like people are risk adverse or like avoid confrontation, and you can do that with yourself, right? And you're still, again, it kind of goes back to processing through what you're dealing with. Because if not, you're just toting around with you. Even avoiding, sure, you can avoid it. It's always there, so.
Yeah. Well, so going through your life and you're in that darkness and you're feeling that, right? And you think that's who you are. So everything you do is from that space of who you are.
Right.
So you're that guy and you're going through your world and you're bipolar, borderline, all this stuff, right? But you don't know that yet, but you're just feeling these emotions. And then you go in and they diagnose and say, look, this is what's going on. And you feel a sense of relief. Right? A releasing of what you thought was going on for a different piece of information. So a new piece of information comes in and you think, oh, like there's this breathing out of like, oh man. And then there becomes this hope for the future that now I can actually do something about it. And so you start to become that person of hope, right? So you were that other guy for years.
Right.
And then in an instant, you have this new shift in information and you take in this new information and you have this hope and you start to become this other person that is out there doing something with their life where you're actually able to make a difference.
Right.
Can you speak about how you envisioned yourself or how that's been evolving and how that impacts your emotions and what you've experienced in the past? Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I think a big thing, with kind of getting diagnosed and having this different view, looking back, a lot of my decisions and thought process were almost fear-based or had a very negative connotation. Like it was, I mean, everything was driven from based off of fear because it was, self-worth or shame and that's a big part of it, right? Is
right.
Shame. There's always this shame piece you're carrying around. So when I got diagnosed, I was in an inpatient facility. So like, that's pretty much all you have to focus on. Right. And it was a very like, almost like holistic moment to myself because I was like, wow, this is kind of it. Like I'm honestly, even having a diagnosis was a tool, right? Like here it is, like, take this and work with it, So I mean, and at that point I had a whole team of, from psychiatrists down to social workers to kind of come up with a plan and work through like what this is going to look like and what can I do to help myself. And honestly, being able to accept help from others and help from them and have a plan with people outside of that facility to help me and accept that help. That was a huge piece of it, right? Was being able to look at myself and saying, it's okay, I need help, and being able to accept that help or see myself worthy of accepting that help. Because
how do you see that, like help, right? Because like I have a version of this that says that our success is going to be from the inside out. Okay. And maybe there's a variation of this that I'm not seeing. But people will come in and they'll teach us information, they'll inspire us, they'll bring us information or ideas or concepts that develop the hope that's within us. And then we're the ones that are left to go out and do something with that or not do something with that. Right. So always coming from us. But I wouldn't be where I am today without the inspiration of the people that were around me.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Because and especially people around you, your family, your friends, you're interacting with them on a day-to-day, right? And like part of it, a big thing for me was honesty, right? I wasn't honest with myself, kind of who I was, what I was feeling. So I wasn't honest essentially with anybody that I was around, right? So you kind of break trust with that as well. So there's always kind of this.
But you didn't own what was going on inside you either. So how could you be honest with them if it's not yours?
Correct.
Right?
Right. And then so being able to be honest with myself and tell, my spouse, my friends, my family, how I'm feeling, what I'm dealing with, and not being ashamed of that, and being able to accept their input and let them help me, or, not be standoffish if someone says, hey, like you've been dragging for a few days, or you're not as social or outgoing, or what's going on, and not just, again, lying to myself and turning it around and saying, oh, I'm fine, like actually sitting with that and discussing it with them. Like, what have you noticed, or what do you feel? And because again, they're part of your life. Like, everybody that you interact with on a day-to-day is part of you. So again, being honest.
That honesty, right? Like, you're able to tell it. Somebody says something, and then you go into your justifications of why you can't change what you're owning, right? That doesn't create change, because the justification is for the past. Justification is, here's why I am the way I am, and there's nothing I can do about it. Justification will keep us stuck and out of learning. But when you're honest and you're open like that, where you're sharing and you're committed to creating it differently, that's a different story, because you'll hear information out here and you're willing to at least look at it and see if it aligns with where you're going, right? It doesn't mean you have to adopt everything that comes into your space.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy, like if you're kind of not in a good space with yourself, to just like instantaneously get defensive and just make excuses essentially as to why, right? Instead of like someone who cares about you saying something, don't immediately get defense, because you'll put a wall up really quick, and then again, you're not processing any of it, and it's just affecting you and affecting your your one-to-one relationship. So
like what Amanda said is, you avoid vulnerability, and that's true. I mean, you come out at a superficial level where people can talk to the surface of you, right? The facade of you, but they don't get in deep, because you've justified. That justification creates a wall between what's really going on and what they get to experience.
Right.
And so our goal is to like take away the justification. Like, if there's something to do, being able to look at it doesn't mean you have to process every thought. I mean, we have 50,000 thoughts a day, and 70% of those are negative. That the odds of us having a negative thought are pretty substantial.
Right.
And so being able to process through our thoughts is a near impossibility. I call it like cutting down a tree one leaf at a time. It's not the way to do it. It's not effective. Right.
For sure.
So, but to be able to sit with the emotion and let the emotion go through and just notice it, right? To notice the thoughts as they pass by, like you would a river. It changes it so that now you can start to recreate who you are, because who you are will tell you what to think and what to feel and all that stuff. And so you start working on yourself internally, and then that shifts everything. Is that your experience as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's to your point, it's kind of like building blocks, right? You just got to keep having these like positive thoughts, positive interactions, and keep moving through them. And because, to your point, you're going to have your percentage of having negative thoughts is way higher, right? They're just constantly flowing. So that's your narrative you're telling yourself, you're going to let those stick, as opposed to letting them kind of
flow
pass by. Right. And honestly, like even the negative thoughts, it's important for me to kind of sit with them as well and understand, like, why am I having these negative thoughts? Right. Especially if it's like a recurring thing, like, why am I telling myself this over and over and over again, as opposed to, just letting it be true to me. So,
well, and you think of the way the brain is designed, it's designed for survival. It's proficient at survival, and we can get put in really hard situations and come through them. It's amazing what we can go through. So the brain is looking at our environment, looking for things that might be a danger to us. And the negative is part of that observation of what's going on around us, and it wants to pay attention. But where we can override that is we can look at it and say, yeah, you know what, that makes sense. That's a valid point. I'm going to pay attention to that negative thought because it's going to serve me.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, we can take that negative thought and say, I hear you. I appreciate you. Thank you for what you're doing for me. Right. And I'm going to hold your hand as we go over here and we do this. Right. It's like, you're not trying to get rid of that part of you because you will never get rid of that part of you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And
do you have that same view or experience in your world? Is it a hand holding, a reparenting, so to speak, of
it definitely is. And it's constant, right? It's not like a one-time thing. It's all the time. It's there, like to your, your wolf statue, right? It's there. You're like, a lot of times your mind, your body wants to embrace that because it's just easier to kind of say, I'm going to take this negative thought and say F it, right? Like it's easier,
way easier to think negatively than positively. And that's why less people do it.
Right. I mean, you literally have to like I feel like you have to make a conscious decision to, and I'm not saying like you talked about like pooping unicorns and whatnot. Like, it's like, like it's like,
he's obviously watched the show a few times.
Yeah, it's way to bring that back. I like
absolutely. Actually, Ryan had a brass unicorn yesterday. I just wanted to say
that actually fits now. I see why you wanted that.
But like, you can there can be like a false sense of like positive too, right? Like I've been around people that I've interacted with that I know are struggling, but they put up this super positive facade that like it's not pooping unicorns. It's like, dude, you really need to like sit down for a minute and let's kind of get to it, because it's almost like glaring. It's such a facade,
well, there's the adage that you don't make decisions when you're super happy and you don't make decisions when you're super depressed. It's like both of them can put you in a space
going to the grocery store hungry.
Yeah.
It's not a good plan.
Don't do it.
Really.
Yeah. Well,
I do it all the time. It's not good.
I end up with like 7 cases of taquitos, but
it's what else?
Like it's kind of like mania, right? Like you're not making rational decisions.
Mania.
You're manic, right? You're like, cool, I'm leaving my job, I'm buying a Maserati and I'm hitting the road, right? And you're like, now what? It's the worst possible time to make a decision. It's like, because it's not from like a sound state, you're just kind of going for it. And so
the chemicals in the body are elevated, right? In either direction, whether it was a negative emotion or a positive emotion. And that's really what's happening is one gets us to move towards something and the other away from something.
Mm-hmm.
If it were that simple, it's like ones and zeros in the computer. And so if we're super like style, it's like the Matrix, right? If we're manic though, then we're all one, or if we're manic in the other direction, we're all zero. And there is a balance of really looking at, calming the body down either way. It's like nobody wants to calm down from being too happy. Like we want to keep that going. But when we get angry or sad, it's like, I can't get out of this fast enough. But it's a chemical signal, just like happiness is. Why aren't you doing the same thing to happiness?
Right.
Like just feel it. Like, and then when you get to a normal state, then do your decision making from there. Right.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I had a therapist when I was living in the Chicagoland area. She was just like, she could tell when I'd go in and she's like, dude, you're operating at like 1,000 vibration right now. She's like, don't make any decisions right now. She could just feel it, and like, I thought I was fine, I'm like, dude, I'm here, right? Like everything's good. And like, literally she's like, just chill for 1 minute and look at yourself, like you cannot make any sound decision because you're literally operating at 1,000,
chain like, yourself to the radiator for a couple of days.
Pretty much. Swallow the key. Like it was so, it was, but and it's the same, right? Like it could be, you could be feeling super positive about it, but you're not in a clear state of mind either, So it's also a vibe.
So we, as we go through our journeys, so we have the 12 journeys and when you're in a regulated state, then we talk about the growth journeys, but we don't even go there if you're in a dysregulated state. So if you're dysregulated, our primary purpose is to get you to calm. And then from calm, then we'll move into growth. Because if it were a survival situation and you didn't have food and shelter and safety, your primary responsibility would be to those, not what movie am I going to go see next?
Right. Yeah, build a friendship or something.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to,
Yeah, and all the survival shows ever, nobody was like first like, "Hey, buddy." It was like immediately to, "I need food, water, shelter."
Find the three-legged gazelle and jump on it. Like,
yeah, exactly. I'm not going to build a spa and get a massage. I need food, right?
Yeah.
So being in a dysregulated state is a lot like that. When you're emotionally in survival, then your primary responsibility is to get out of that survival state, right? Just like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or it's Rich's hierarchy of needs now. If you can only do one thing to move towards peace and calm, it's from that peace and calm that you'll be able to start generating a future that's different from the one you've experienced.
Right.
But if you're busy fighting what is, then you're stuck fighting what is. You're in a battle. So there's no looking at the future. You don't build a garden. I shared this the other day. You don't build a garden in a war zone. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right. I can vouch for that. Like,
my mind just went to like World War II. Some guys, they're like just boom, 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 boom. Some guys out there planting tomatoes and rows.
It's gonna be great. This is gonna be awesome.
Can't wait.
Why do you keep walking on my tomatoes?
Right.
Yeah. So from the vision though, for us to have hope of a better future, we've got to be able to see it clearly, imagine it, right? And not only imagine it, but imagine that we're the ones that can do something about it. And then also that we're willing to do whatever it takes to create that. So we become so anchored into our future. There's a book that was shared with me by Townsend Wardlaw. It says, "Be Your Future Self Now," by Dr. Benjamin Hardy, right? Really, really powerful book. Be your future self now. And what he talks about is a lot of the research, some of the things we talk about in our program. But he talks about anchoring into your future self, because when you come from your future self and you're working from your present to that, you show up as a more powerful and different person. If you're coming from your past and you're creating your present, then you're stuck in whoever you've been, whatever version of you that's been. So your present is going to be a continuation of that. So it's important to anchor into who you are going to be. And that's where hope comes in, because you have this idea, I can actually do that.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, that's actually, that was a really cool, like, thought there. That's, it seems very like, I guess, like logical, right? Like work towards who you want to be, but starting from who you want to be and kind of building towards that is, I don't know. It just literally blew my mind right now. That was it's really cool to think about that, because you're starting from almost a positive place, or where you want to be, or what you want to see that change to be
out there, right? Like from there.
Right. And you're kind of leaving that past trauma, negative thoughts, whatever it may be, and you're starting from where you want to be. That's just, honestly, that's amazing. Like I don't know. It seems very simplistic, but like,
it does seem really easy. But then you have your whole history and gravity.
Yeah, it's like, how come I didn't think about this sooner? But that's amazing.
Well, the beauty of it is that we make predictions. Our brains are designed for prediction. It's called the Be Your Future Self Now by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. I'm listening on Audible. I can't get enough of this book because we've been teaching this for years now around the 12 journeys. And it was my journey before it was even what we have as a program. And then to hear his work and the research that he put into this, and it's what we've been saying. But the component that he adds that I think just clarifies everything is that our life comes from who we're being, right? Comes from it. It's not like we go somewhere and then we change. It's like we change and then we create the things. And so his view of creating the future self and anchoring into that future self and then coming from that as you move forward creates a different present. different reality, because we, going back to the idea of being predicting machines, our brain is predicting out. It's thinking what's going to happen next, and it's trying to prepare for that. And too many of us are stuck in this cycle of predicting from our past. So they call this the remembered present. We pull the past to the now, and then we predict from there. And all we can see is a continuation of maybe slightly better than what we've experienced in the past. So we think we're this linear progression.
Right.
And what he's saying is forgive all that. Create a cutting off of that past, of embracing it, loving it. There's no hope in the past. There's only hope in the future, right? That's his view of it. So we can't go back and change what happened, but we can definitely change the narrative, and we can also change what we do moving forward. So embracing that past and giving ourselves a space to just let it be what it is, and then anchoring into our future selves and coming from that future self pulls us forward into that future self. Right. That's where The Art of Accomplishment. Yeah, that's a book I wrote in 2011, which I've been in testing of those concepts for the past 13 years. When I wrote that book, The Art of Accomplishment, I had these theories, right? I had these ideas of how it all works. And over the past 13 years, I've been able to put it into practice for myself, and then able to teach others. And it's amazing to see the shifts that are coming out of people.
That's amazing. And I feel like that can change your current perspective, right? Like how you're seeing things. If you're almost like working towards your future self by anchoring now, like it changes your narrative you're telling yourself now, like in the moment, in the present. And I feel like that could be a huge like shift in your thought process and how you perceive things. It can come from a more positive place as opposed to toting around your past. So
notice your languaging, even the coming from, like that's the big thing, is it comes from you anyway. Right. So why not come from a better version of you? And the beauty of this is, our growth journeys are around uncertainty and abundance and vision and surrender and nurture. And those are all internal jobs. So like if we can see into the possibility of the unknown and see the resources that are already around us that we get to manipulate and draw from to create whatever we can imagine, and then we get to imagine without limitation, and then we get to let go of how it comes about and just play with the pathway, then we just nurture ourselves within that. And as we grow in capacity, all of that grows in capacity. Our ability to see more and more grows. And so those growth journeys are vital, but you can't even see them when you're in a dysregulated state.
Right. Because it becomes in a dysregulated state, it's literally just fight or flight, right? It's like you're literally in survival mode. There is no going forward. It's like almost like minute to minute, right? Like, how am I getting to this next minimal step to just survive? There's no, to your point, there is no growth. It's just surviving.
Right. When your survival is taken care of, then your thriving is taken care of. But if your survival isn't taken care of, you can't thrive. So you got to take care of survival. And the thing that draws it all together, our final journey is the legacy journey, the purpose journey, the why journey. And this goes to Viktor Frankl's work, who, he has the most impactful book in the world outside of the Bible and the Quran and all these big books. The idea of purpose, like, why are we even doing this? And for Ryan and I, as we look at the journeys, purpose isn't just one thing. We have as many as we want, as many reasons as we want to do what we're doing, like places to rest. I'll rest when I get there. That's what the word purpose means, is a place to pause. So I'll rest when this is created, but I'm not resting until that's created. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's awesome.
So what does that bring up for you, though? I want to hear your version of this. Like I can sit here and rant, but as you're hearing this for you, like, what does that bring up for you?
I think a big thing for me, and kind of like what I work towards and what I see myself working towards in the future, like at its core, and it is something I think about continuously, is stability, right? And that can be stability internally, mentally, physically, and then just stability in my life in general, right? Stability for people around me, because I'm unstable. It's causing instability for everyone else around, kids, family, friends, relationships. So for me, kind of moving forward, my big thing that I try to work on is stability, and just
I like that.
He has a dream, dude. Don't let him fool you. What's your dream, Rich? Me and you have a dream of like doing what?
I want to own a taco cart.
Yeah. Really?
But I want to make Philly cheesesteak sandwiches, not tacos. So it's my dream.
I love it.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he's an amazing chef, and so that's like the thing that he's holding out there as a vision. Not because I mean, he doesn't have to be a big bazillionaire. If that is even a word, but it's the
It is
purpose
now.
and the fun of you're welcome,
Yeah.
everyone.
Scrooge
You're
McDuck,
welcome.
dude.
Yeah, I mean, but I know Rich. I've known him and I've got to know him very well over the last 6 months. Like we know each other really well for 6 months of a
Not in the
relationship.
biblical sense,
Yeah,
but
no,
very well.
not even close. But sometimes
That's a different
he'll reach
show.
over and hold my hand. I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I thought we were just getting to that stage."
Just go with it.
No, just kidding. But he has this dream and this vision, and he's holding it out there, and he's using, like he's got a job and he's got his daily responsibilities and things like that. But he's continuously moving forward to creating that into reality, because it'll bring him like his it's something that he wants, a passion that he has, because he likes to see people smile and be happy. He's a lot like me, where like I give hugs, he wants to give food and see the satisfaction. Like we love to serve people, and I've seen that in Rich. Is he'll do something for you, no expectation of anything in return. And so that's something that I know that Rich is working towards, as well as the stability and things like that. It's the same thing for me and the Giants, is that as I'm growing and I'm stumbling through, I'm sharing my journey, and I'm doing this a little bit selfishly, truthfully, is it's because it's helping me grow. And then I see other people grow, and so it's like, that feels so good. Like I want to do more of it as I'm growing myself. Doesn't mean I'm perfect or I'm some on some pedestal, not even a little bit. It's that I'm in the journey too, and I like to see other people on their journey and help them where I can, and then also get helped where I can. So yeah, anyway,
I like
that's what I know
That's
about
awesome.
old Rich.
That's cool, man. I think of this work that we do. This is lifelong.
It is a love language for
right?
sure.
We will be doing this work forever. And a lot of times coming into the 12 journeys or any other program like this is people tear up the whole yard trying to get rid of the weeds. And it's like, you don't get rid of the grass just because you're trying to get rid of the weeds. Like there are some positive things that you've developed in your life that you want to carry forward, right? We're just trying to get rid of the weeds. That's it. So start looking at the weeds, not the entire yard. And I think that's where people get overwhelmed, is they're like, oh, I got to redo everything. No, we just have to do the weeds, right? That's Jonathan Wardlaw calls it that. And, but for us, it's feeling small. It's where do you feel small, not where you feel giant. You don't tear up where you feel giant.
Right.
Unless you want to be small.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's cool.
So, I love the journey, hearing your perspective too, going through the darkness, going through the diagnosis, finding the hope, learning the tools, because you had to practice this, and it's ongoing, using things like medication to help regulate the emotions so that you can do the work. Right. I am not opposed to medication. For me, it wasn't helpful. For other people, it's very helpful. So you do what's best for your body,
Right. And it's finding what's right too, right? Like the majority of what I had been prescribed, it wasn't helpful at all. It actually made it worse, but it was essentially finding what works for you individually,
Yeah, what you're offering is a way for others to see hope in themselves. I mean, truly, that's what your story does.
Yeah.
They can see you and say, I can do that. And that's the goal, because I can't go do their work. You can't go do their work.
Right.
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 So I appreciate it. What else do you want to share today?
You guys touched on a lot of it. Yeah. I don't smoke, but I feel like I need a cigarette, but it's like a therapy session. No, you guys are fantastic. You guys are awesome.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Thanks for
sure.
what you shared. This really serves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ryan, what other thoughts do you have?
Just quick is that, like some of these things that we highlight on our show are sometimes extreme things, but you might have these things going on at different levels, different variations, different realities, because you're living your life. Rich is living his life. Nick, me, we all live our own journey. And so, but if you can see some things in here, that's really the hope. That's really the goal, is to show people that, hey, look, if we can do these things, or as we're doing these things, we share them with you so you can kind of see that, hey, this is possible. And so I'm super grateful for Rich, for his friendship, and for being willing to come on here and talk about his journey, and there's a lot more to it. That's like a sliver of what Rich has been through. How do you take a whole life and put it into an hour-long show? It's not possible.
Yeah.
But it gives you a glimpse, and that's the goal of this show, is to help people.
What is this, a show for ants?
Yes. We needed at least 3 times as big.
Yeah.
But that's really the goal of the show, is to help you to see, to start seeing your giant potential, and that other people are doing it, and that it's possible.
Yeah.
And so, keep stepping, keep doing the things that will move you forward. And when you do something that doesn't, learn from it. That's the goal.
Yeah.
And what does Nick Smith say? You're right on time. You're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Did I say that?
Yeah. Yep.
I love it. Hey, Rich, I want to have you grab your book right there. You got your book right behind you, and
yeah, actually autographed.
Nice.
How about that?
From both of us. That's awesome.
Yeah, I have Ryan autographs. Yeah.
That's where this all kind of started from. Is that book? These journeys come from that book, and that book comes from life experience. It's a metaphor for life for all of us. And so, man, it's cool to see it in the background, to see it in your home.
Yeah.
That's the seed of it right there. If for the foundation, that's the metaphor. But then the harder work comes in. What's up, Steve Hardison? The harder work comes in, and in doing this. So, do not read this sentence.
You did it. You read
it. Well, okay. So I'm going to do a little background here, because there may be some people here that don't know the story. Is I got to stand on the shoulder of Steve Hardison in a parking lot at Welfare Center in Salt Lake City back in 2009. And so that was the inspiration for all of this. Is he showed me a way to see the world, which I had never looked at the world that way before. I thought the world was happening to me, and Steve Hardison showed me a way that the world could happen for me. He put me on his shoulder, and he is the giant in the giants and the smalls. And
That's
so
awesome.
that journey is a metaphor of my growth through this, things I wanted to teach my kids, and things I wanted to share with the world around what it really takes to create yourself as a giant. And it is a creation of yourself. He didn't pull me and taffy me to death to become a giant, right? It's like, he inspired me by who he was in the world, who he is in the world. And that inspiration lit something in me that now I get to share with others and light in them, but I don't get to do their work, right?
Yeah.
It's like you go to the VA and some guy walks up to you, he got to stand on your shoulder, right?
Right.
So you're the giant in that book, right? So
Right.
that's the beauty of all of this is our vision is to impact as many lives as we can. Our vision is 100 million lives globally. That's not gone. Our vision is the movie. And so that these things are not dead. We're still working on pathways. How do we do it?
Yeah. And none of us have a crystal ball, right? It's like kind of just go on our path. Like you said, it's not linear, right? Just keep on trucking, So
if you do find a crystal ball, though, hook me up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Helpful. Right. In fact, though, if I looked back and I had to see everything that had to happen for me to be where I am today, I would have been so overwhelmed. I wouldn't have done any of it. It'd be too much. So I'm grateful for that.
Good.
Yeah. Just drop it.
Yeah.
Small life is great.
I don't think so. Right.
Small life is great.
Well, good. Anything else, guys, today before we wrap up?
I really appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. Keep doing the work.
Yeah, thank you.
It's great. Yeah. I wanted to say, like long time listener, first time caller. So it's kind
It's great to have you on the show today. Yeah.
of
Thanks for being such a solid listener.
right.
We have a lot of those though. And yeah, thank you, man. It's cool
Absolutely.
to hear your journey. And for those that are watching, for you that are watching, this is your journey too. So see yourself in his story, because that's possible. I hope that lit something in you. And so just keep stepping. Like Ryan just said, you are where you are. That's where you're going to launch from, right? You're exactly
Yep.
where you need to be. I don't have the necklace on right now, but you are where you are. You are who you are right now. And whatever's going on in your life is whatever's going on in your life. But moving forward, there's a version of you haven't even tapped into yet, right? So anchor into that person that you want to create yourself as, and from here, move there. Don't go the other way around. Stop looking for the X, okay? Because you are the X. So from there, move out. My original logo for Clear Path Training was a guy moving from the X, right? A person moving from the X. Because we are where we are, and we get to choose our path in whatever direction we go to. And so do that. Thanks for being a part of our journey. We love you. We will see you in the next episode. Go make it a giant day.
Love you too.
Thanks, guys.